Hey folks, Jackdaw here with a news update on the next Dragon Age game. Today I am rounding up April's updates on Dragon Age 4. We're going over two brand new BioWare Developer Stories. We have a story on contracted Dragon Age QA developers who are filing to unionise, and we have a BioWare veteran who has left the Dragon Age team. We've got a lot of blogs and articles to go through today, so that's why I am ditching the camera and delving straight into this one. But before we get into the news, in my last video I announced that I am a BioWare Gear Store ambassador, which means I can give you all a sweet discount to use in the BioWare Gear Store. I have a new code for you today, which is BWJackdaw1 in full caps for 20% off at the BioWare Gear Store right now. Anyhow, with that said, let's delve straight into these two brand new BioWare developer blogs. In the middle of April, BioWare posted a new community update blog which covered the next game's progression. I explored this fully in my last news update if you would like the full scoop on this entire blog. But essentially, the blog shared insights from a few members of the Dragon Age team, showcasing community and fan works, and it unveiled a brand new blog program called Developer Stories, which will introduce many members of the Dragon Age team in great detail, allowing us fans to get a better understanding on who's creating the next Dragon Age game and what their job title entails day to day. Since the reveal of that community update blog, we have received two developer stories, one about creative director John Epler and the other about technical director Maciej Kurowski, which is apparently how it is pronounced, like Maciej according to many of you. I do really appreciate all of you coming in and providing clarity on pronunciations because I suck at pronouncing words properly. Hopefully I have pronounced it right this time. Now we'll start with John Epler's blog and then I will cover Maciej's just after. So reading this from the start, friends, welcome to the first of many BioWare developer stories. In this series, we'll be talking with our colleagues here at the studio about their histories, what they do at BioWare, what makes this such a special place to work, and all sorts of other topics. Today's lucky contestant is John Epler, creative director for the Dragon Age franchise. John's been at BioWare since the late 2000s, but he actually didn't get his start on the creative side of things at all. In fact, before BioWare, he was in a different field entirely, the audiovisual trade. The story so far: I was selling TVs. I knew I wanted to get into games though, and at the time BioWare was hiring term testers, which is a contract position in quality assurance. I got lucky enough to run into a couple of BioWare people at the store and mentioned that I'd applied. I got an interview, got the job, and I've been working at BioWare ever since. After a few years in quality assurance, John started working as a cinematic designer on Dragon Age Origins, which he describes as working with a huge library of animations to put together cinematic scenes. It's largely about knowing the animation library well enough to be able to go, oh, I need someone to walk backwards for 3 seconds. Here's the animation that does that. So you round up all the appropriate animations and stitch them into a finished scene. John remained a cinematic designer through Dragon Age Inquisition, graduating to lead cinematic designer for Inquisition's DLC. From there, he moved into the narrative director role for the next game, which is more about the story and characters of a game as a whole. You're focused on narrative as some of the holistic experiences, as he puts it, and now as creative director, he takes an even wider view, keeping an eye on the game and the franchise as a whole, and making calls about where to focus resources on the project. On Dragon Age. With all this Dragon Age experience, you might expect John feels a strong connection to the series, and you would be correct. When we ask about some memorable moments from his time with BioWare, he goes right to the closing days of Inquisition's development. We were finishing out the Red Cliff scene, and one of our audio guys called me down to listen to what he'd been working on. I remember standing there, hearing the theme kick in and thinking, oh wow, we might have something special on our hands here. We'd put so much of ourselves into this thing and it was finally coming together. It's a scene where the player has to decide what their character believes in, and that kind of moment is one of the hallmarks of the series. Faith is a big theme throughout the games. Not faith in a religious sense necessarily, but belief in something. Whether that something is a wholly unknowable figure or another person or even just yourself. And the game looks at what happens when that belief is challenged or completely broken. John's connection to the franchise extends even outside of the games themselves. He contributed to the 2020 short story anthology Dragon Age to Winter Nights, so naturally we had to ask how writing a short story compares to writing on games. Honestly, both have their own challenges. Writing games has to consider interactivity, budget, branching, technical needs, so the actual writing is only a small part of the job. Fiction is easier in that I can write whatever I want because there's never going to be someone building any of it. But I think you lose a lot of shortcuts that you get in games. Like, I hate writing fight scenes, but in a game I can say, and there should be a fight here, and I never ever have to write another fight scene. On BioWare, there's a reason Dragon Age makes such an impression even on the people who help make it. Dragon Age is really about the people. The stuff with BioWare games that tends to get referenced the most, the things you hear people bring up time and time again, it's almost never the big critical path beats, it's the character beats, and at their best, those critical path beats and those character beats become the same thing. It's about how those characters interact with each other. Family is where you find it is a pretty core theme for all of our games. And John's introduction to the studio's own cast of characters was an especially memorable one. My very first day at BioWare was the day they held the Mass Effect launch party. It was at our local science centre, and they had the game playable on the planetarium screen. We had the run of the place after hours. It was pretty incredible, he pauses. It may have set the bar way too high. And what would John be doing if he hadn't found his way to the studio? Honestly, I don't know. I nearly ended up working at a paper supply company before I got the job at BioWare, so maybe there's an alternate universe John out there somewhere that's basically, I want to say Jim from The Office, but I'll be honest and say Andy. And he's living that life and probably making games in his spare time. But it's hard to imagine. Honestly, I've been working here for nearly a third of the time I've been alive. John is the creative director for the Dragon Age franchise, and you can find him at Twitter at EplerJC. Honestly, I actually really loved reading that. It was the first time I read it properly myself, and it's just really nice to get more of the character of who John is, his history, and what Dragon Age really means to him. And I honestly completely agree about Dragon Age being all about family. It is absolutely all about those fantastic characters who join this journey and we fall in love with or we despise, and it's the dynamic of those story beats connecting with those characters, and that's just what makes this intense narrative even more intense, and another reason why we love it so much. Let's move on to Maciej Kurowski's developer story. Welcome to another edition of BioWare Developer Stories, where we learn what drives the people who make our games, how they got here, what they do here, what they think about being here, what they do when they're not here, and, well, you get the idea. Let's move on. Today, we're talking with Maciej Kurowski, the technical director for the Dragon Age franchise. Maciej will have been with BioWare for 6 years this May and has been in the games industry as a whole for over 13 years. The story so far. After earning his master's in computer science, Maciej joined a small independent studio in Poland, where he started as a programmer and quickly moved up to Chief Technology Officer. It may seem like it'd be quite different from working at a big studio like BioWare, but that experience offered some invaluable insight. Starting on a small indie team with very few resources helped me understand something very quickly. What ultimately matters is to get a good game out. Any tech, no matter how impressive, is just a means to an end. And that's an important lesson when things scale up. On a big, highly specialized team, it's sometimes easy to get lost in technical minutiae. So I'm grateful for the experience of being forced to focus on the end product. That focus continues to inform his work as technical director, where he oversees not only the technology that drives our games, but also the tools our developers use to make them. So the proper focus can make a huge difference. Ultimately, my goal is to launch a high quality game smoothly, while staying within the time frame and scope we've set for the game. But making a game takes years, and every day brings different issues that need to be dealt with in order to get to that goal. We asked Maciej what an average day looks like on the path to that destination, and it sounds like there may not be such a thing as an average day. Some days are spent in deeply technical discussions about how to solve unexpected challenges. Others are dedicated to checking up on the well-being of my team, but probably my favorite days are the ones where I can help the devs in other departments figure out their challenges. I love that we can all work together to make the best experiences for players. On Dragon Age, it's hard to express how gratifying it is to have players who experience these games and feel so passionately about them. So I like to ask our interviewees why they think fans respond so strongly. In the case of Dragon Age, I think it's that these aren't your usual fantasy stories. Fantasy has been historically aimed at teenage males, and that used to be the demographic games were geared towards too. But that's no longer the primary demographic of gamers, and it was never the whole demographic anyway. So I think especially with Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition, that Dragon Age speaks to a wider variety of people, with stories that aren't just about being cool, doing fancy things with a sword, killing things, and seeing lots of blood. And the stories part of that is especially key. Another thing is that these games are a mix of pure role-playing, being able to build your own character and have them act in a variety of different ways, and a strong story. There are a bunch of other really successful role-playing games that have more of a simulation approach, where it's all about freedom, but that can come at the cost of a complex story and the connection a player makes to that story. I think since BioWare games tend to prioritize storytelling more, while still offering genuine role-playing, players can really get invested. I think there are a few games that can balance those two things as well as Dragon Age does, and I honestly absolutely absolutely agree to that. That balance grabs even folks like Maciej, who develop the tech for games. It's what keeps him so invested that he won't even consider playing an evil or even rude character. Hard relate to that. I appreciate the existence of the jerk option, but it just feels wrong to not be nice. I'm probably nicer to virtual people than to actual people. It's what allows him to name his favourite moment in any Dragon Age with almost no pause for thought. Wicked Eyes and Wicked Hearts and Inquisition, the one in Orlais with all the court intrigue. And it's what gives him an easy answer for what Dragon Age character he'd most like to work alongside, Varric. So he can narrate our efforts making the game while flashing his magnificent chest. On BioWare, you'll notice as we do more of these dev stories that lots of folks talk about BioWare games as almost a genre in themselves, and we're always curious what it is that our colleagues think makes BioWare special. Perhaps unsurprisingly, Maciej has a technology-focused answer. One thing that I was pleasantly surprised with when I started here was how closely we're able to collaborate with other electronic arts studios on our tech. We don't just share central developed tech, there's also lots of other code sharing between the studios. It may be surprising to players, but there are lots of common technical challenges that we share with games as different from ours as FIFA, and being able to contribute solutions that ends up being used across many different games is a great perk. Quick pause for a second there, but I suppose that is a pro of each of EA's studios using Frostbite. The fact that they probably all run into similar issues, and that one issue that BioWare may run into, a team like DICE or whoever develops FIFA, I actually don't know who develops FIFA, I think it's EA Sports, I don't know, but they may have a fix to that. So you know what, it's actually really great to hear an advantage of the Frostbite engine from Maciej here. And that's not even mentioning the collaboration that has had to happen between BioWare's own two studios, situated over 2,000 miles apart. Throw a global pandemic into the mix and you've got the potential for a technological nightmare, but the team took things in stride. Ever since I joined, we were working in a distributed manner between our Edmonton and Austin studios, but the pandemic forced us to rapidly deal with all new challenges that come from an extremely distributed team. It was chaotic at first for sure, but I think we ended up even stronger than before. We're just glad that our newfound ability to work remotely has driven Maciej back to his more temperature homeland. I'm told Edmonton is a prime example of North American urban sprawl, and that's a bad thing, but I actually enjoy all of the space. The weather though, when the air hits your face in the winter, that hurts. Maciej Kurowski is the technical director for the Dragon Age franchise. When not at work, he can be found scrutinizing home improvement videos on YouTube for tips on how to fix his bathroom. Again, it's fantastic to hear and understand more about the developers of Dragon Age 4 and gain some personal information on how they feel about Dragon Age, the BioWare team, the studio, and their history, you know, where they could be, what they do in their spare time. It's nice content, it makes for a nice shake-up. Also, it's great to hear that there are many more of these on the way. I will certainly be keeping my eyes out for them in the future. But moving away from that and on to the next story, a group of contracted quality assurance testers who are working on Dragon Age 4 have filed an application to unionise. I'm going to quote IGN's article for the sake of the length of this video, and their article followed. The employees who work directly with developer BioWare, but as contractors of supporting company Keyword Studios, are attempting to unionise over issues of poor pay, a return to work mandate, and more. An anonymous source told Kotaku that Keyword employees would have to return to their Alberta-based office on May 9th, despite cause of COVID-19 slowly rising since the start of April. Keyword employees would not be entitled to sick pay if they had to quarantine as a result of COVID-19, the source said, while BioWare employees are allowed to work from home completely. The return to work ruling was seemingly the final straw for the 15 to 20 QA testers who allegedly are already subject to poor pay. The source said that some employees are being paid $16.50 Canadian dollars per hour, which is $12.82 US dollars, which is considerably less than identical roles carried out by full BioWare employees. Other issues were raised, including gender pay discrimination, a lack of useful performance evaluations, and a hostile response to unionizing efforts. The union application was filed on April 20th and is currently being reviewed by the Alberta Labour Relations Board until May 3rd. A vote to unionize will be held within the next 2 weeks, and the result will be confirmed by the board within another 2 weeks. The source said that the group is very confident it would win the vote, having taken inspiration from the recent effort of Raven Software QA employees to unionize, allowing them to have more influence over their workplace. They became the first union with an Activision Blizzard, despite alleged attempts from the developer to stop them. The workers were left out of recent pay increases at the company. However, with Activision Blizzard saying that it was due to legal obligations under the National Labour Relations Act. Yeah, not really too much to say on this, other than the fact that I am all for higher pay and better working conditions for games companies as a whole. I'm really hoping for the best for employees who are under Keyword Studios, but of course are working on Dragon Age 4 at BioWare. BioWare, especially with the pandemic and the forced mandatory conditions when literally the entire BioWare teams can work from home. I don't think that is fair in the slightest. So I am really hoping that it is good news for these developers, and I'm hoping that the Alberta Labour Relations Board stands up towards this vote and it is voted in favour of these developers. Anyway, that brings us to the final story of April that I have for you. And that is story artist Nick Thornborrow has left BioWare and the Dragon Age team after 14.9 years. Nick posted on Twitter on Friday, April 29th, "Today is my last day at BioWare. If I'd stayed another 2 weeks, I'd have been there for 15 years, which, how? I'm so grateful for the past 14.96153846 years. I think I got all of those numbers right there. And in particular, this last year doing story art. And I'm still not sorry for putting that Wolf Jaw necklace on Solas. It's been a pretty emotional week saying goodbye, but change is good in this case. I'm excited about what's up next, which I'll talk about in a couple of weeks after I've had a chance to decompress a bit." So it seems that Nick's role has changed in the past year, but as I've known, Nick has been a concept artist working on the Dragon Age team. And Nick was in fact one of the many artists responsible for creating the beautiful Dread Wolf Rises mural that is a fantastic piece that we have dissected to almost death by many of us fans. It's certainly sad to see Nick leave after all these years, but I'm absolutely wishing him the best in his future endeavours. Thank you, Nick, for the 14.9 years that you have spent at BioWare and on the Dragon Age team. As a fan base, I know that we all share the sentiment that we really appreciate the time and care that you have spent on one of our favourite franchises. So thank you so much, Nick. Now, I'm probably going to save talking about departures for another video, probably in June, which will be my what you need to know about Dragon Age 4's development so far, where I go over, the main production phases of Dragon Age and the major updates that we've had, as opposed to going through pre-production and everything else. I kind of just strictly go through the production phases there. So I'll save talking about departures for that, but honestly, I am not worried about this departure. Nick has spent almost 15 years at a company. I do not think that there is cause for concern with him leaving. He's been there for a long time. It's completely understandable why he wants to shake things up. And like he said, he'll be talking about his new role in the coming weeks. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about this departure meaning anything for Dragon Age 4. But with that all unnerved, let me know all of your thoughts on each of these stories. How do you feel about these blogs coming out from BioWare? Has it hit you properly that we are starting the marketing campaigns for Dragon Age 4? And soon down the line, we're going to be seeing gameplay, trailers, and other huge teasers. I'm trying not to get too excited, but it'll be an absolute fantastic time on this channel when all of that news hits us. How do you feel about Nick's departure, and what are your thoughts on Dragon Age 4's development at the moment? I would love to hear your honest thoughts, because honesty is something that I do cherish on this channel. And yeah, I just want to know what you're feeling about Dragon Age 4 currently. Let me know every single thing down below. But don't forget to use my all caps BW Jackdaw 1 code in the BioWare Gear store right now for a 20% off your order. It helps me out and it also helps you out, so I'd really appreciate it if you use that, of course, if you are going to be making any purchases on the BioWare Gear store. Of course, as per usual, you are already in the right place for all of your BioWare news, speculation, and fun whack theories. I have been Jackdaw, and I should go. Whoa, 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 whoa.